Blessings, good evening. Tonight we have a question and answer session. So a lot of questions come in from within the monastery, so we'll endeavour to answer them. So the first question is, in Buddhism, it encourages loving kindness without exception to all beings, yet it also encourages to associate with the wise and keep the unwise distant. Where do we strike the balance between these 2 points? Well, in the chanting we do one chant, the chant on universal loving kindness. Like you say, the Buddha encouraged us to practice universal, meaning to all beings in all realms, loving kindness. It's one of the 4 Brahmaviharas, these sublime abidings, which are meditation objects that can take you all the way to jhana and then rebirth in a Brahma loka, like a Brahma god. But there are also themes, qualities that one develops in daily practice. So it's kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy and equanimity. And you'll notice if you meditate on those qualities, there really is no room in the mind for preference or prejudice. One is developing loving kindness in all directions to all beings, because one is not discriminating. They compare it to like the sun shining down on the world. It really doesn't choose who it shines on. Male, female, creatures, big and small, insects, big creatures, small creatures. There's no discrimination when the sun is shining. And it's the same for when one is cultivating loving kindness as an object of meditation. One, as it were, shines in all directions, above, below, before, behind, in front, to the side. So that will include people that are wise, unwise, friendly, hostile, indifferent, people you know, people you don't know. Everyone is covered. And we believe that's how the Buddha practiced, and indeed not just the Buddha, but those disciples who cultivate the path in samadhi and ultimately become enlightened. Their kindness and compassion is universal for whatever beings they come in contact with. So that never changes as a practice, but as you pointed out, the Buddha also said try to associate with the wise and not to associate with the unwise, the foolish. That's a bit of practical advice, particularly as we're developing the practice. We need to pick our teachers and our examples and who we spend time with, because they affect us, the people around us. And we have to admit, maybe in the beginning of our practice we're not yet strong and wise in ourselves, so then if you associate with people who are not practicing or have wrong views or do crazy things, then that will affect you, maybe sway you from the path, lead you. If you follow them, you might make all kinds of bad karma and throw up obstacles in the path of your practice. So a general teaching is, well, avoid the unwise and stick close to the wise. Who are the wise? Well, they're those people who are, we say, Kalyana Mitta, who always encourage you to follow the path of the Noble Eightfold Path, cultivate good karma and abandon bad karma in your behavior. And they set an example in what they do. They always advise us in the right way. They give us good advice, and they can help us on the path. Whereas the unwise will tend to hinder us and cause us trouble and either hurt us directly or indirectly by maybe giving us the wrong advice, wrong example. But that doesn't mean to say you can't have goodwill and compassion for the unwise. It's simply a practical teaching. You're reflecting on how much time you spend with people and who you associate with. But the people who you may choose to avoid because you know they're going to lead you in unskillful ways doesn't mean to say you don't have compassion or kindness for them. You can still have that, but you're simply choosing not to. If you have the choice, you choose not to spend your time so much with them because they're not supportive of the practice. This world is full of many kinds of people, and of course animals as well. So just now we walked across to the hall, and there was a whole bunch of kangaroos next to the hall. They're the unwise. We live with them. We see them every day. We live with them. And we have metta for them, but we don't follow their example. We don't look to them for an example because we know they're not practicing the path leading to Nibbana. But we still have kindness for them. And that applies to the world. We have people in the world who have many different beliefs. Some are favourable to Buddhism, the majority are not. The majority of people in the world don't know the Buddha and his teachings. They may be quite against what the Buddha taught, or don't give it any value in their life. So we just have to accept that. But we can still practice kindness for them. Basically, you practice kindness for anyone you come in contact with. But that, whether you actually spend time with those people or follow their example, take advice from them, that's a separate issue, isn't it? And you can choose as much as you can. Or it may be people closer to home, like family members. It's very common for one family member to practice Dhamma, have faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha perhaps, and another person doesn't. And they may even be against it or just not valuing it and not supportive of what you're doing. But you can still have kindness, compassion for those family members because you're living with them, you're meeting them. Maybe in the long run, the kindness you have for them will help them in one way or another. And we can still help people in the world who are not Buddhists and who do unwise things, just as we sometimes still do unwise things. Until we're enlightened, we still have mental defilements, greed, anger, delusion. And you constantly have to choose between following the way of the defilements or the way of Dhamma. And sometimes we get it wrong, and we follow our wrong views and follow our greed, we indulge our greed, or we get angry, lose our temper, or sometimes we're just deluded and confused and do foolish things. And we have to forgive ourselves, learn from our mistakes and move on. So whether it's internally in our own mind or the people we meet around us, we still practice kindness for everyone, but we are learning to understand what is the path, what is not, what is a skillful way to act or an unskillful way in ourselves and then in others. And we also have to accept we can't always control life, so where you do have a choice, where you choose maybe to associate with fellow Buddhist practitioners, come to places like this, Buddhist monasteries, temples, Buddhist centers where you can get teaching, find friendship, good examples. But where you can't choose, you have to practice a lot of patience, tolerance, kindness, and you can't always choose who you spend time with. You go to work, there'll be many different people you're working with different beliefs, different behaviors, or in the family, or in a circle of friends. You don't always get a choice. So when you're with people who are acting in unwise ways, you have to be very careful and try not to let them influence you. If you know, say somebody you're with doesn't want to keep the precepts, they like to break one or more of the precepts, well, that's their choice, and maybe there's nothing you can do to stop them. But you can choose what you do. Even when you're with people who don't keep the precepts, you can carry on keeping the precepts. Or when you're with people who don't meditate, you can still learn to meditate, carry on your own meditation. Maybe in a subtle way you're helping those people through your practice. But we can't always choose who we spend time with, who we're with. So we have to learn how to keep our practice going even when we're with people who don't practice or don't understand. And sometimes that's a good training, isn't it? They're testing you to see whether you're really firm in your practice. Because they don't keep the precepts, they're testing you to see if you'll still keep the precepts. Yes, you can say as a Buddhist monk, you may leave a monastery and go out into the world. You may be tempted to drop some of your rules of training because people around you are not keeping them and they don't understand them. But if you really want to train your mind to give up greed, anger and delusion, well, you're not going to do that. Or if you're a layperson, maybe you keep the 5 precepts and you go to work and half the people you work with don't keep the 5 precepts. So they're kind of testing you whether you really want to keep the precepts or not. And whether you have the discipline, the commitment to do that, even if people around you are not doing that. Also, when we practice, we're bringing our attention inwards, aren't we, to our mind all the time. So you get a certain detached awareness or sense of seclusion from the world, even if you're still in the world, mixing with people and moving around in the world. So then you get a certain feeling of peace that you can rely on even when you're with people who are not peaceful or not practicing the Dhamma, say. That sense of peace has become something you can turn to even if you're in a situation when there are people around you who are acting in unskillful ways, aggressive, or getting drunk, or acting in ways that are just not very skillful. You can return to your inner sense of peace, and that becomes your refuge at those times when you can't avoid being with other people who are maybe acting in different ways than you. So you have to learn how to have this inner refuge. Then whether you're on your own, or you're with other people who practice Dhamma, or you're with other people who don't practice Dhamma, you're okay. You can survive, you know how to practice for yourself in each situation. Ajahn Chah used to say you have to get to the point where you practice the same whether you're on your own or you're with other people. You make your practice, your commitment to the practice and your personal discipline, your mindfulness and your understanding of how to live in an ethical way, personal integrity. You make that really clear to yourself. Then wherever you go, you carry on practicing in the proper way, in the best way. That's your aim, that's your goal. So if you're with someone who doesn't keep the precepts, doesn't practice, then that's like a test, isn't it? A challenge. See what you can do. And sometimes there's no choice. You let them do their foolish thing. You don't agree, you don't support it, but there's nothing you can do. So you just have to practice equanimity. They're going to do whatever they're doing, so they get on with it, and you're not going to do that, so you don't get on with it, you don't follow them. And sometimes you have to make that decision for yourself at work or in a social situation. There's all those people who go to a Christmas party because they keep the 5 precepts, they don't drink. Other people are getting wildly drunk around them, saying foolish things, doing foolish things. Maybe you can have sympathy for them if you've done it yourself before. Like most of us, when we're young, we do foolish things quite easily. As you get older or practice more, maybe you give up certain behavior, certain habits. But you can still have sympathy and understanding for others who still act in those ways. And you just understand, they don't see the harm of their actions yet. Like here in the monastery, sometimes you hear the gunshots of hunters, and you know they're making bad karma for themselves by hunting, but there's nothing you can do to stop them. So you just wish them well. May they learn to stop hunting. May people learn to stop getting drunk, stop fighting, stop arguing, stop stealing, stop killing. You wish for that for the people around you, but you can't impose it on them, so you have to just practice goodwill and tolerance and patience. So we learn, don't we? We learn from these situations. I often tell people about how when I started practicing Buddhism, I gave up drinking after I learned to meditate, because I just couldn't meditate and then go and drink alcohol. It just didn't work together. But then my friends, quite a lot of them would still drink. And they complain about me not drinking, tell me I'm no fun. But I knew why I wasn't drinking, and I was happy because I was meditating a lot and I was getting some peace, mindfulness from my meditation. So I knew why I didn't drink. I knew why they were telling me I was no fun anymore and complaining, but I just stuck to my guns. And in the end, quite a few of my friends gave up drinking. It took a few years, but eventually they did. Here's another question. When I was meditating last night, I was in the state where I can get to a calm state of the focus, but it just couldn't get into it. It feels like it constantly up and down between 60 and 70% to that floating in the air level. What should I focus or fix on next time? Well, 60 to 70% of that floating in the air level sounds pretty good to me. Just keep doing it. Many people would consider that success, because a lot of people don't get anywhere near even 1% of the floating in the air level. I assume you mean floating in the air means you have that lightness of body and mind, what we call piti or rapture, which as we start to focus on our meditation object and let go of other distracting thoughts, sleepiness, concern about painful feelings and so on, then the mind and body become very light, very calm and steady, so you often do feel like you're floating. So 60 to 70% is better than nothing, isn't it? You have to take what you get as you meditate, and you can't expect to always, well certainly in the beginning, always get to the most peaceful state that you've ever experienced. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. And simply wanting is not enough. We have to practice, train regularly, we have to be patient, put effort in. And we have to learn what are the obstacles. And we have to accept sometimes the conditions, the various supportive conditions are not ideal. So sometimes simply physically we're tired or ill or run down. That doesn't help. It's not an ultimate obstacle, because when you're tired or ill, you can still attain samadhi, a state of calm, but it's just much harder. Or sometimes other things have happened in your day, where maybe you got really distracted or you didn't look after your mindfulness through the day very well, so that when you come to meditate, your previous experience is more agitated than normal, so then it's harder for your mind to settle down. Obvious one, if you have an argument or a disagreement with someone, when you come to meditate, often it's very difficult to settle because your mind is being stirred up. Or if you have been thinking about something you really like, say a person you really like or want, or something, some experience you really like or want, you've let your mind indulge in that, then when you start to meditate, that maybe will be filling up your mind. It'll take much longer to settle down and let it go. And so on. Or if you talk to some people who fill you full of doubt, they talk all about other meditation techniques, other teachers, other places, and then you start thinking, maybe that's the right way to meditate. And then when you come to do your normal meditation, your mind is already full of doubt, so it's hard to settle down, and so on. So what you've been doing previously will be a conditioning factor, will have an effect on your meditation, your health, physical health, how tired you are, how much you've eaten, how much you've slept. These can all have an influence. And then your effort level will have an influence, won't it? Sometimes we really try because we become inspired and motivated. Maybe we hear some Dhamma teaching, or we think about something that we find inspires us, makes us want to meditate. Then when we really try sincerely and put more effort, and then we get better results. And sometimes that's very quick. You just recollect or remember a certain Dhamma teaching or a teacher or the Buddha, and very quickly your mind settles down. It helps you to cut through a lot of the distraction and the hindrances. But then other times our effort level is more kind of casual, and you're just sitting there but not really trying, so fall asleep. You're not really very refined in your mindfulness, your attention, paying attention to your object. You're just kind of passing the time, maybe a little bit bored, distracted, looking at the clock, wondering when the whole thing is going to finish. Your state of mind will vary from session to session or day to day. These are all things you have to look into. Look into the quality of your effort. Look at physical and mental factors, and then learn how to get through the obstacles. Learn how to train your mind to put your attention on your meditation object, say the breath, regularly, and best of all is frequently. Frequently through the day, become really used to going back to the breath. When you've got a few moments free, do a bit of breath meditation. Even if you're doing some other task, you can go back to the breath. So you become used to going back to the breath, if that's your meditation object, as a reference point. Then your mind gets more used to turning away from everything else to the breath. But still there'll be times when you feel you're practicing really flat. No energy, no mental energy, no physical energy, and whatever you do, it just doesn't seem to be happening. So you also have to practice a lot of patience, endurance, until your energy level comes up again. So all of these things you're learning through regular practice, and in a monastery you have this chance to really learn about yourself in an ideal situation. How much to eat, how much to sleep, how much to talk and engage with others, how to spend your time, how much to sit meditation, how much to walk, how to use your mind and learn from the things that are coming up. You've got the most ideal situation to learn, but as you're learning there'll be difficulties. It's not all easy, but you have to make them things that you learn from, turn them into lessons for yourself. What stirs you up, what agitates you, what's supportive for your practice. What level of effort is right for you? Too much is not good, too little not good. What is the right amount? And you'll notice when you do feel very calm, like when you have this level where you're feeling like you're floating calm, you'll notice certain things kind of drop into place, don't they? The effort level seems just right and more natural, your mind seems more at ease. You're not straining, but you're not being lazy. Your sila, your practice of the discipline, the rules and precepts is quite natural again, quite easy, quite good. You haven't been doing a lot of things that really distract you or bring up strong negative emotions. Your overall level of mindfulness, maybe previously to your meditation session, has been quite good. You'll notice all the different factors that fall into place when you have what we call a good meditation. But when you have what we call a bad meditation, you still learn from it. So there's no real bad meditation. You're just learning what went wrong or what are the obstacles, and that can be very valuable. And you learn about yourself and you say, oh, today I could only achieve 60% of my samadhi, or even just 30%. Would not be unusual. Why? What's gone wrong? Where are the problems? Oh, it's because I keep thinking about that issue in my life, my health, my money, my work, my partner, my relationships, my friend, my family. There'll be certain recurring themes that bug you and pull your attention away from your mind. And you start linking that to your meditation and the things that are filling your mind, distracting you. Or maybe it's activities that you've been involved with. So you notice, oh, today I didn't eat enough food, or I ate too much food, or today I've been so physically active that when I come to meditate, my mind just can't settle down. I'm too tired. Or last night I didn't sleep at all, or not enough, so now I feel really tired and I can't meditate, and so on. You're learning about yourself and what's supportive and what's obstructive to your meditation. So another practice is when you do have a time when you meditate and you get into the 100% floating feeling, if that's how you describe it, afterwards, really sit down and reflect what worked today. What led up to that? What did I let go? And why did I let go of everything so well? And you may learn about what works as well as what is not working. You learn from that, and then what's working, you learn from that. So this is a very direct learning experience. Direct meaning you're learning about your own mind, what is conducive to the arising of mindfulness, states of calm, and what is not. And as you meditate, you'll be learning what behavior supports it. So in a monastery, with many people, sometimes you notice a monk, there'll be a time when he disappears. Off he goes and he's meditating. Maybe that's because on that day things are going really well and he wants to put all his effort into his meditation and doesn't want to waste time with unnecessary business. Sometimes you'll notice that because they're off meditating and they just don't want to get distracted. Occasionally even monks they'll fast. They say, I don't want to eat today because I want to meditate. My meditation is going well, so they fast. There'll be certain times when one really puts effort into the meditation because things are coming together and you want to use that. Or maybe a very common one is like at night time, 10, 11 o'clock at night, whatever time you go to bed, normally, you get to that time and your mind is actually still quite peaceful and bright. So you say, I'm not going to go to sleep yet. I'm going to carry on doing some walking meditation or sitting meditation because my mind is bright. So sometimes you have to respond to the situation. So if your mind is more peaceful than usual, or you put more effort into your practice, keep going. Do it longer, really become familiar with the peaceful mind, the state of samadhi. Other times when things are not going very well, just be very patient with yourself and tolerant and accept it. the ups and downs of the mind are quite normal. It's only the experts, the Dhamma experts, the enlightened ones who you might say have a certain stability of mind, whatever, because they've removed so many defilements, there's not so much left coming up to disturb them. But the normal practitioner will have lots of ups and downs, and that's part of it. You're just learning how to be patient and deal with those ups and downs. Another question. In the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutta, the Buddha instructs to breathe in and out, liberating the mind, contemplating impermanence, contemplating the fading of passions, contemplating cessation and contemplating relinquishment. How does one approach and practice this teaching? Well, that sutta is a very structured sutta, isn't it? You begin with the basics. You get your posture right, sit up straight, find an empty dwelling or a quiet place in the forest. So you find a quiet place, you sit up straight, and you establish mindfulness in front of you, meaning you put your attention on the breath, the in and out breath. If you find it best here, at the tip of your nostrils, good, or your chest, or your abdomen, doesn't matter, but the important thing is to establish mindfulness with the breath. Take that as your object and train to know the in-breath, know the full breath. So you breathe in till it stops, breathe out till it stops, breathe in, breathe out, and train yourself in that, to know the long breath, the short breath, the coarse breath, the refined breath. Basically just to know your own breath in that period of time that you're meditating, to really know your breathing. Get familiar with the feeling, the sensation, and it will change. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes slower. That's the first thing, isn't it? Get to know the whole breath, get to know the breath going in and out, and get to know, we say, the full breath, the full body of the breath. Some teachers say, well, know the breath as completely as it goes in, as it goes out, or some teachers say, well, know the breath as it's becoming a sensation, internal sensation around the body. Because actually the more you focus your mind on the breathing, you're focusing on every molecule, cell of air in your body. Every cell in your body has oxygen in it. The reason we breathe, it goes into your lungs, and from the lungs the oxygen goes into your bloodstream and goes all around the body. So if you're focusing on the breath, you become aware of the whole of the body, internally. And then similarly, the breath that's going out is removing carbon dioxide and other gases from the body going out. So if that's all you're focusing on, it's one element of the body, you become very, very aware of that whole element in your body. You become aware of the body through the breath. People also start to get a very tangible nimitta or sign of the breath. So it could be just this very cool feeling, the mind gathering together with the breath in one place. It could be here at the tip of the nostrils or the chest. And there's this sense of very cool, continuous awareness in this one place. Some people even have visual nimittas, light. It could be strands of light around the body, or just one sphere of light. You may not have these things, but generally the mind and the breath become one. They're merging together. And so the breath becomes very prominent, and the mind becomes very prominent, because you're not distracted by other things. So even sensations in the body, pain, itching, becomes less and less important to you. The mind and the breath become the most important thing. Thoughts, feelings, they're arising, passing away, but they're no longer bothering you. So as the mind and the body become, the mind and the body, or the mind and the breath become one, it becomes very still, steady, centered. you have this ability to contemplate without getting too lost or distracted in your experience. If your mind and body become really one-pointed, then you won't get distracted at all. But if you, say, attain what we call upajjhara samadhi, access concentration, well, there's a little bit of movement of breath and sensations and sights, but it's not bothering you very much. So you can still contemplate. Contemplation means observing these characteristics of impermanence, suffering, not self, without getting distracted or lost. Normally we don't contemplate very well because we get lost in the details of our thoughts and our moods, and we start thinking about something and there's just no more mindfulness very quickly. We've lost it. We're no longer detached, just knowing our experience. We're getting lost in our experience. So if you have a pain, that becomes what you think about and how you don't like it and don't want it and you want to move. Or you get lost in thoughts of the future, your plans and what you're going to do next. Or lost in thoughts about what happened before, the past. Or you fall asleep. You normally, if your mindfulness is not very strong, you can't contemplate very well. You can say, oh, all my thoughts are impermanent, but that's just an opinion. It's not actually seeing or knowing thoughts arising and ceasing, is it? It's just a thought. Oh, yeah, I know all thoughts are impermanent. Well, you're not seeing them. But when your mind is calm, because you've been practicing this anapanasati, then seeing a thought arise, pass away, you can do it. You can contemplate. Rather than getting lost in it, you just know it. It arises, passes away. Good thought, bad thought, happy thought, sad thought, interesting thought, boring thought. You're no longer getting lost in those kind of details. Now you're just seeing thought formations, mental formations as mental formations, because you have this steadiness of mind. The calm, as samadhi develops, it's from this stillness then you can see what is not still, the movement of the mind, thoughts arising, feelings. So you can even be aware of painful feelings as just painful feelings, mental states as just mental states. And you can learn from them, so you can see a wholesome mental state as a wholesome mental state, an unwholesome mental state as unwholesome, and you let them all go because you're steady and one-pointed. The more you do that, then you're relinquishing, you're letting go of attachment and this sort of self-identification with all your physical sensations, thoughts, feelings, memories. And you'll notice the fading of passions, because this is actually very peaceful, practicing in this way. And the peace, the calm, the happiness of samadhi is better than the happiness or the pleasure of passions. So it's better than eating nice food, all kinds of sensual experience, sexual experience, all those normal kind of pleasures and passions of the world, anger, fear. These are all seen in the light of their true nature, which is that they arise and cease, and they're not self. Well, this is a gradual unfolding of experience, a gradual seeing, realizing of the nature of things. As you're doing this, then little by little you're unbinding the mind from its normal attachment to things. It's relinquishing. But how fast or how slow the whole process goes depends on many factors. How much effort we put into it, how much time we give to it, how many different qualities we've developed so far in our practice. We may have a good meditation from time to time, but what we're aiming to is to do it all the time, frequently. And that takes time. Now the question. When practicing body contemplation, do we have one part, for example, the skin, and recite it as we would for Buddha, or do we need to more actively contemplate it? Well, there's a number of ways to approach this. So there's room for experiment and learning, learning. But the way I was taught was you run through the 32 parts of the body one by one to begin with. Because we're new to the practice, we have to get familiar with the visual image and then also putting your attention on each part. So literally, if you're case of the skin, you visualize the skin and you put your mind on one part of the skin. And if you're visualizing it, you may also recite the word tacho, or skin. So you can both recite the word, visualize it, and put your mind's attention on one part of the skin, for example, and you keep doing that. In the beginning, you do that one by one, so it obviously can take a lot of time. You go through each of the 32 parts one by one. That could take you a whole hour if you're doing it properly. And that's fine. You're not in a rush, you're not going anywhere, so you go one by one, visualizing, getting familiar with it, with the way each part looks, where it is and the name, reciting it, to hold your attention, but also to become familiar with the object. Then you start to narrow it down. You may pick one part that you feel right with, or occasionally, sometimes we have an actual nimitta of the part arise, naturally, spontaneously. Either way, eventually you'll settle on one part of the body. So in the case of skin, tacho, and then you take that up and really develop it often, frequently. Visualize it, recite the word. Just as with the breath, you don't want to deviate from knowing the breath. When you're contemplating the body, you don't want to deviate from knowing that body part. But as you're doing it, like the breath, it becomes more interesting to you and you start to get different understandings arise, different insights arise. So with the skin, you may sometimes explore the skin, this skin that I have surrounding my body. You can ask questions about it. How long does it last? It's not going to be here forever. Nobody lasts forever. It's impermanent. Even in the course of a few days, your skin is changing, isn't it? You wash your hair or your head and you get dry skin. We get dry skin flaking off all the time. At the moment I've got a sunburnt back, so I've got lots of dry skin flaking off. That's a teaching in itself, isn't it? If you get sunburnt and you see pieces of skin coming off, you can clearly see they're impermanent, not very good looking, and they're not self because they fall apart in your fingers and you drop them and it just becomes dust. And in any room, in a building, the majority of the dust is human skin. We're even breathing in skin molecules from each other all the time. In this room, we're sitting here, I'm breathing in your skin. I don't like it, I don't want it, but I do it. That's the way the world is. We breathe in skin dust all the time. And dust, as it forms on a cup or a table or something, you run your finger over dust. A lot of that is just skin from human beings. So this is all a contemplation that starts to emerge out of focusing on this one body part. But in particular, you're seeing the nature of skin as impermanent, not self, and it's seeing its ugly side. Skin, as it ages, it becomes less attractive. Eventually you die and the skin shrivels up and disappears. Or you could contemplate skin as an element. What is the most prominent element in the skin is probably the earth element, the hard part. The other elements are in there as well. There's a lot of water in skin as well, but skin is hard to the touch. That's why it protects the body and keeps the body inside. So the earth element, that's where skin goes back to. So this dust that we accumulate, or when you die, your skin goes back to the earth, doesn't it? all of that can come out of the contemplation of just focusing on skin, contemplating the different aspects of it, asking questions, thinking it through. And in the beginning you're using thought, and that's okay. But as your mind becomes more one-pointed, maybe you don't need to think about it anymore, you're just knowing skin. Maybe even the recitation of the word tacho, 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 you don't need anymore, and you just take a visual image of skin. Fix your mind on that. And gradually you're getting this sense of separation between the mind that knows and the object, in this case skin. Could be any of those 32 body parts. But the mind is one thing and the body part is another. And that sense of them being separate things becomes very clear to you. That also gives new insights, just a sense of mind that knows things, but the mind is not the body. And the sense of this mind is just inhabiting the body, but it's not the body. It becomes very clear sometimes. So you look at skin in a different way than normal. You used to look at your skin more from just the place of my skin, how does it look? If there's a blemish on it, you don't like it. We wash it, we put perfumes and things on it. We're always doing things with our skin from a place of self and attachment. I like it, I don't like it, and the same for other people's skin. Now, when your mind is peaceful and you develop strong mindfulness and direct it to the skin, there's a whole new perception. Skin is now seen as just a collection of elements, and it's not a person, a being, a self, it's just skin. And the sense of separation or relinquishment, dispassion, detachment becomes much stronger. And if you really see skin as not self, then there's no loss. If you lose all your skin, you die, lose all your skin, so what? You are no longer identifying with it as self. That might be the conclusion of that meditation. So there's plenty to explore, but you begin by focusing on the different parts until you find one that you really resonate with. Another question. What thought do I use to counter arrogance? Well, when you come into the monastery, you're already doing that quite well. You won't be able to drop your arrogance in one day, but a monastery is designed to remove arrogance from the residents. Say, when you come into the monastery, you take on precepts, discipline, you shave your head, you wear the robes. So already some of the coarser kinds of your arrogance and conceit will fade. You just have the same clothes as everyone, you eat the same food, you follow the same routine. This is all designed to help you see arrogance as it comes up, but then also to go beyond it. And you realize we're all much the same, aren't we? We're in the same boat, literally the same boat. We call this at Bozada Hall a boat. We're in the same boat, we're in the same hall, same monastery, following the same rules, same practices. These are reflections you bring up over and over again. And you can challenge your arrogance when it comes up. So say you're given a chore to do in the monastery, you say, "Ooh, this chore is beneath me, I shouldn't have to do this." Say you're asked to clean the toilets or clean something you don't really want to do, and you're cleaning up someone else's dirt and mess. You know, "Oh, I shouldn't have to do this." But then you have to reflect, don't you? Well, everybody has to make mess, everyone needs to use the toilet or the other facilities, everybody is doing the same thing. Somebody has to clean it up. And in a monastery, it's not owned by one person, so we all have a collective responsibility. So you use these simple situations to see through your arrogance and see the pain or suffering of arrogance. Arrogance is not peaceful, is it? When you're meditating, maybe it will come up strongly over some past incident, something somebody said or some situation, And you can't meditate very well because you're full of arrogance, aren't you? They shouldn't make me do this, life is not fair, this is not right, I demand justice, I shouldn't have to clean the toilets. It'll come up as you're meditating. That's what you're working with. So if you're successful, maybe you go to the breath and you watch those thoughts of arrogance arise, pass away and dissolve into nothing. And then you say, they're just thoughts. There's nothing real, there's nothing very substantial in any of it. It's just an opinion I formed, a sense of self, fed by a lot of thinking, a certain situation, and you can see through it and see the suffering of it, and our aim is to free our mind from suffering. So you're learning how to do that as you meditate. We use some wisdom, we use mindfulness, we use the breath, we use other reflections as well, and we can use loving kindness and compassion. You can see, when I'm caught into arrogance, I'm suffering. So compassion for yourself, let go of the arrogance, give it up. When you see arrogance in other people, you know they're going to be suffering as well. And often it's just a habit of mind. We've got into the habit of building up this sense of self in our family, our workplace, our social group. But now we can look at it, look back at it and say, there's a lot of suffering in that. Now is the time to drop that way of thinking. And we've got useful tools to do that. We've got the meditation techniques, we've got the reflections on impermanence. And who is this self that is feeling all proud or hurt pride when your arrogance is tested, or somebody puts you down or criticizes you? Who is that anyway? Where is the person in all of that? It's feelings, emotions, thoughts, rises, passes away. What is it anyway? There's not much there, is there? We all get old, sick and die. However arrogant you are, however good you are, or however bad you are, you still get old, get sick and die. We're all in the same, facing the same truths. So there's many avenues to reflect on it, but you're reflecting to see it's impermanent, it's not self, it's suffering, let it go. Ajahn Chah used to find skillful ways to help people let go of their arrogance. So sometimes he'd push them up, praise them, tell them how good they were, and then a little while later he'd be telling them how bad they were, where they're going wrong. So he'd pull them up, pull them down, until they gave up thinking like that. You just give up the conceit, the pride, the arrogance, and just, it doesn't matter. Whether he's going to praise me, put me down, doesn't matter. You no longer respond in those sort of habitual ways with sense of self. It's just the words of the teacher. They come to the ear, they arise, they pass away. I'm not going to let my mind suffer just because of somebody else's words or some external situation, because arrogance makes you suffer. You've got to get to the point where you can see that, then you can let it go. If you still believe it, believe in the sense of self, and you believe you're right and you should be, everyone should praise you more, they should treat you better, or life should treat you better, it means you haven't seen it, which means you won't be able to let go of it yet. So when we meditate, we're calming down so we can see what's going on in our mind. And you can see, it's very heavy to carry arrogance around, because you have to keep reacting with anger and aversion and fear and insecurity and all of that. And that's suffering. So if you don't want suffering, let it all go. Still quite a few. We'll just go through them. How do I overcome my fear of death and trauma? Before that the two are of the same vein, as they invoke powerful emotions that are ever present within our psyche, And it would be useful to change that fear into a more positive outlook. Sorry for the odd question. It's not an odd question, it's a very central question. We all have fear of death and trauma because we have a sense of self. We attach to this body as self. Me, mine, myself. And nobody wants to lose that because of self, the delusion of self. As long as you have a delusion of self, you have something that you want to cling on to. So then you get fear because you're afraid you'll lose it or get hurt or damaged. So that's why we contemplate to see these five, what we call the five khandhas: body, feelings, perceptions, thought formations, sense consciousness. Five khandhas as impermanent, suffering, not self. We have to keep looking, questioning that attachment, that identification with these things. And the easiest way is to see the changing nature, the impermanent nature of these five khandhas, because when you see impermanence, you're seeing, well, there's nothing lasting there that I can say really is a self, therefore I can let go. And it's okay to let go. You say, well, who lets go? Well, the mind lets go, but that's the mind trained in insight. So fear of losing things, fear of pain, fear of unhappiness, that's a real thing and everybody experiences. But underlying it is the grasping at body and feelings and thoughts as self. This sense of self, that's what we're grasping at. So that's what we're looking into, the process of grasping and clinging and questioning it, seeing if we can unravel it a bit. And you'll notice when say you're doing some breath meditation and you feel really calm, the sense of self starts to fade. That's why you feel calm. You're not worried about everything, fearing everything, regretting everything, getting upset about everything when you're with the breathing. If you have that sense of mindfulness, more mindfulness, then you can see through some of these emotions and see them as arising and ceasing, but they're nothing very real or lasting. So you get a new perspective on them. So fear may still arise, but fear is impermanent and it's nothing very solid. I can let go of it. And you see what fear does to us. Fear makes us imagine the worst, creates pictures and ideas of things that are going to be bad for us and terrible for us. That's what fear does. It leads the mind to proliferate in a very negative, fearful way. Makes us insecure, uncomfortable. Physically we're uncomfortable with fear. You don't feel good when you're afraid. Mentally we're not at ease. So you can see the suffering of it, but you're starting to unravel that as you bring up mindfulness. You can see the way, if you believe the fear, you hold on to it, it sets your mind thinking in those ways. If you can be mindful enough to see fear as a thought, as an emotion, it arises, but then you don't feed it, you don't hold on to it, you let it go again, a lot of that mental proliferation starts to slow down or stop. You feel better. Maybe if you keep working at that, and you have to be very patient and work at it and keep practicing, but if you have a breakthrough, you might have enough mindfulness to let go of some kind of fear that's being bothering you. It comes up, but then you let it go, and then you see, the mind can also be stronger than the fear, clearer, more mindful than the fear. The fear then changes. You get a different perspective on it. You see, it's just that much. It's just a feeling, just an emotion. It may probably return, but it won't return quite so powerful as before. It won't overwhelm you quite so much as before. Ajahn Chah used to say we should be more afraid of losing our mindfulness than whatever it is that we're afraid of. Because the real danger is losing your mindfulness, losing your wisdom, because then the mind falls into all kinds of suffering, negative mind states. But what we do is we are afraid of something out there, some idea, some problem, something that we're afraid of. So we lose our mindfulness and just give in to the trains of thought, the emotions, the feelings associated with that fear. And it'll take ages to fix. And often it becomes a habit, so you keep thinking and keep going back to that same kind of experience. When you're practicing mindfulness, you're doing the opposite. You're pulling your mind back to the present moment, and the stronger your mindfulness, the less the fear will overcome you, the better you'll feel. So that's why they always say, say you're in a situation where you're feeling fear. You're in the dark and there's something out there. You're facing the possibility of some kind of operation, surgery, or terrible illness. Somebody is giving you a hard time, bullying you or something. Fear arises. Find a way to make yourself mindful at that time. Go to the breath, go to Buddha, or think of the Buddha, think of a teacher. Think of something that will hold your mindfulness at that moment. Then the fear finds it harder to establish itself in your mind. Maybe it will fade altogether, or certainly it will diminish, you get less. And you keep doing that, and then fear doesn't overwhelm you so much. It's not so much of a problem. So sometimes we have to face the things we fear, face the fear. Can't always run away from it. When entering the state of calm, where the sense of the body converges into one, I stay at that stage for about 40 minutes and not sure what to do next. Can I have some guide for the next steps, what to do in detail? Well, number one is always bring up and maintain mindfulness. That's your number one priority. Don't lose your mindfulness, or if you do lose it, bring it back again, re-establish it, keep it going. So if you get to a state of calm, usually that means your mindfulness is fairly continuous. Keep it going. So you can do one of two things. You can either just keep your mindfulness paying attention to the object, such as the breath, and keep doing that as long as you can. Enjoy it, because you'll usually feel calm, relaxed, peaceful in body and mind. Keep it going as long as you can. If you're in a group session, well, okay, there'll be a bell or some end to it. But if you're on your own, keep it going longer. For hours, if you can. Because this practice of mindfulness on an object has a very purifying effect on the mind. It will make your mindfulness stronger. It will help you to have enough clarity to overcome all kinds of fears and other kinds of suffering. So do it as much as you can, as long as you can. The other thing you can do is contemplate, as we've been discussing. So if you reach a point where you're mindful, you're calm, you're alert, you're not sleepy, you're not distracted, you're not sure what to do next, then bring up the physical body as an object to develop insight. So you could run through those 32 parts I was saying earlier. Give your mind some work to do. Run around the body using mindfulness to contemplate, visualize and understand the body better as impermanent suffering, as not self. You could also contemplate the 4 elements. So the 32 parts, the 4 elements. But there's other things we can contemplate. We can contemplate feeling. So say if you've been sitting for a while, you may have some pain coming up, and it may in the beginning just be dull or fairly low level pain, but as longer you sit, that pain may become more intense. So see if you can maintain your mindfulness and contemplate the pain to see that it's not self, which means there's a separation between the knower, the mind, and the pain, the object of the mind. So the better your mindfulness, the stronger, the more continuous your mindfulness, the better you're going to be able to do that. But it's an exercise in contemplating to understand pain as impermanent, suffering, not self. Can contemplate pleasure as well. The pleasurable feelings that you're experiencing as you're in this state of calm, are they a self? Are they permanent? They arise, how do they manifest? How do they fade away? They'll change. You'll have periods when you're really feeling a lot of bliss and then it gradually fades away to nothing. That's all food for contemplation. Or just thoughts that arise. If you're not in a state of complete one-pointedness, you still have thoughts arising, contemplate them. They rise, they pass away. They're not self, they're not permanent, they're not self. Contemplate them. So these 5 khandhas are the food for contemplation. So if your mindfulness is very strong, you can turn to contemplate any aspect. But I generally encourage you to begin with the body, and then move on to feelings, and later on to the mind and mental states. So we have 2 things to do. Maintain mindfulness on the object, but we can also contemplate. So, that's probably enough for tonight, Q&A session. So I'll leave it there and we can end the session.